Thank you, Phyllis. I think all of us find this kind of a revelation. Maybe we've known some aspects of Gilbert Rohde, but Phyllis has brought this all together for the first time. And as we develop this program tonight, we're going to be wanting to talk about the trends he established and how we see them today. So we've got some current practitioners of note with us tonight. First of all, Ayse Birsel, who will be speaking next, grew up in Izmir, Turkey, and has a list of awards and honors that are really too extensive to list in their entirety right here. Some of the most significant: she is a Fulbright Scholar, a Fellow of the International Design Conference in Aspen, recipient of the 2001 Young Designer Award from the Brooklyn Museum of Art, the Athena Award for Excellence in Furniture Design from the Rhode Island School of Design, as well as the IDEA Gold Award and ID Magazine Excellence Award. With Birsel Seck, she established the product design firm of Birsel Seck in 2004. She has been working with Herman Miller for over a decade. Her work is represented in both the Cooper Hewitt and the Museum of Modern Art collections. So please help me welcome Ayse Birsel.
Good evening, and Russ, thank you for the wonderful introduction. And Phyllis, I made some notes that your summary of Gilbert Rohde's work was really inspiring, and when we have the discussion, but it made me feel like, now I know who my design father is. It's really, but let me talk a little bit about our work and how we think about our work. And actually, we were established in 2004, and I don't know why I rounded it off to 2005, but Birsel Seck is my partner, and he's in Dakar, Senegal today, finishing some prototypes. So I will, if he wasn't, he would have been here tonight to join us, but I will represent both of us. And we're based in New York City in this penthouse, Midtown penthouse studio. And I want to give you a kind of a perspective of how we think. We're a small design firm, and it just so happens that we work with large corporations. So it's this contrast of Bibi and our design teams thinking with large corporations for mass manufactured innovation. And I think the easiest way to describe our work is we take in information, synthesize it, and imagine new, simple humanistic solutions. And we're very much user-centered, and our responsibility is, coming up with solutions, solving problems for people, and coming up with solutions that might help them have a better life and hopefully make things a little bit easier, a little bit safer, and so forth. We are systemic thinkers, and in that I learned how to become a systemic designer through my work with Herman Miller. And really it's, what Phyllis was talking about in Rohde's ideas of modularity and flexibility. And it's really the understanding of how a few good pieces can do many things and become really a very rich solution, more than the sum of the parts. And how we go about doing that is really through this deconstruction, reconstruction process. We love to take existing products or old ideas, deconstructed to be able to understand where they're coming from, and edit it out, and then reconstruct it in such a way that it kind of turns an old idea on its head, and it becomes a new paradigm. So here's an example of using a storage project we designed, a storage system we designed for Herman Miller. I just wanted to show you what I mean by deconstruction and reconstruction. You have a traditional file box, which is what we understand traditionally by storage. And when you deconstruct it, it's really saying, okay, what does it really do, this box? It, first of all, holds things upright so that your stuff is not on the floor. And then it helps to contain, organize, cover, and then if you want to lock it, it secures it. And then once you start seeing storage not as a box, but kind of like this separate functions and needs, it helps us reconstruct it and say, you know what, structure, like a skeleton, is kind of the red thread or the common element in any storage system. How it stores, which is like the utility or the organs, whether it's drawers, shelves, doors and things like that, are the options that you can attach to the structure. And cladding, basically how much you want to cover something or open it up, and with what you want to cover it, whether it's metal or wood or glass, could be very optional and very flexible. So this kind of gives us a different way of seeing what storage is and how it could function, and then bringing the user who's at the center and thinking about, what do we do with storage, and realizing that people do more than storing. They also present, they eat, and storage products could help them in more than storing things, and then, but also looking at that these things could happen at work, at home, and in learning environments and health environments. So then, having an outsider's perspective, we usually go from industry to industry in our projects, from contract industry to automobile industry to electronics and retail. And what that does is gives us an outsider's perspective. When you're an outsider, you don't quite know all the limitations, and so you're much more able and it's easier for you to kind of challenge ideas that you wouldn't touch if you knew more about it. And so, and one of the things is that that we try to do is not to put the project at the center of our thinking. So if you're designing a chair, if that's what you're concentrating on, saying to yourself, I'm designing a chair, what you might end up is a chair. If you think of a person sitting in a chair, chances are you're going to end up designing a comfortable, a very ergonomic chair. If you think about, well, there's this person who wants to stop standing, he's tired, you might not even end up with a chair. So it's really what you put at the center of your thinking, and the economy of your thinking in terms of using materials purposefully, honestly, and doing a lot with the least amount of materials. And that really helps us to design things that are sustainable and that use materials very purposefully. Simplicity, Clark Malcolm, a friend of mine, once told me it's simplicity on the other side of complexity, but really getting to a simple solution to a complex problem, and through a process of problem solving and reduction. Play is a big part of our work, because when you play, you're not afraid to make mistakes, just like children. And so we usually, in our projects, try to buy time to be playful and to just explore without worrying about, are we onto something, or are we failing, or are we succeeding? And it's harder and harder to buy that time out of our clients. And we really, our goal is are we connecting with the user? Because at the end of the day, your product, when your product comes out, you're not in the user's home or work environment trying to explain to them how your design works. So we try and connect with the user on these 4 levels, intellectually, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And if you look at products, truly the good products are the ones that connect with the user on these 4 levels. And more often, a lot of products connect on 3 or sometimes 2 levels. It's quite a challenge to get 4 of them. And our clients are really our biggest collaborators. We really enjoy working with them, and often they have the expertise to our creativity, and together we find that it's really a good kind of combination of different thinking styles. So what I wanted to do tonight is, instead of showing you actual products, kind of walk you through our sketchbook, and they relate to the products, but more from a conceptual sense. One of the products that, some of these you might know, and if you don't, please, you could take a look at our website. But Resolve is an office system that I designed for Herman Miller that's based on 120 degrees. If you want to hug somebody, and you really want to embrace somebody, you open your arms wide. This is 120 degrees. This is why, one of the reasons why we chose 120 degrees as the geometry for Resolve, because we wanted the user, the office worker, to sit in a very welcoming environment. It's also designed with the user, and this was one of the sketches I used in the beginning of the project to kind of explain the idea of user and what the user is surrounded with in office environments. And we did an exercise of, if you put technology at the center of an office system, you could get very concrete results. It just might not be humanistic. And what I love about Resolve is that it's a deceptively simple system. These are the parts that make it up. It's about 20 parts, and compared to traditional office systems that have about 300 parts. And part of that was I wanted people to be able to remember when they're ordering Resolve just which parts go with which parts, and make it very simple to combine and use together. It weighs less than 1/3 of traditional office systems, and you can see it can be installed by one person, and that was me. I wanted to design something that I could by myself install, which then makes it quite easy for people who do this for as their profession. It makes it quite easy for them. Then after Resolve as an office system, Bibi and I became partners, and together we designed a storage system for Herman Miller. That was the deconstruction, reconstruction example I was giving. And when we started the project, there was a lot of skepticism about why a storage system, since paper is going away, until you kind of remind people that there's still things that don't fit into your computer. And but also this realization that people bring their lives to work and they take work home, and that a storage system needs to exist in both places. So not a storage system just for work environments, and not a storage system just for homes, but something that could exist in both places, and therefore simplify your life. Once you figure out how to organize yourself with storage, you could do it around the clock. And storage is a very long-term investment. There, most of it is indestructible. And what we realize is usually you need to update or upgrade your furniture because of your needs, functional needs, or simply because of style, and creating a storage system that is very easy to change, whether it's through materials or change a drawer into a shelf or a shelf into a file cabinet, will allow the system to live with you without aging. So we devised kind of like a facelift that's incorporated. And like Resolve, I don't know why, but by the way, this is also for Herman Miller. The Teneo system also has 20 parts, but with which you can make 80 plus products around storage and presentation and hospitality and so forth, which then means that the investment is low, but you have a very rich solution in terms of what you can offer. A quick kind of a note on the Target shopping cart that we worked on as a concept, and this was really about, you know, all the things that Target sells, that is from chicken to T-shirts to makeup to, you know, so how do you get one cart and organize all those things so that basically your coffee is in a safe place, and you know, the chicken doesn't drip on your T-shirt and that sort of thing. This is also one of my favorite projects. It was for Toto, Japan, and some people, I need to tell you that some people know me as the toilet queen because of this project. It's and I'm proud of that, actually. Really, the concept is very simple. It's the realization that a toilet seat is not just a cover for a toilet, but it's a seat. So it should be a comfortable seat. So it's a seat with a hole in it, and that really is the kind of the principle. And then the other is cleaning the toilet is really one of the worst household chores, and so we devised something where you can snap off the lid in the seat and wash them under the shower or faucet. Probably not the dishwasher, but snap them back on again. And I have a long story about this. If we have time, I'll tell you about it. But and then with BBB, well, my partner and I met on automobile design project for Renault, and BB, before we started working together, had been designing cars for Renault, the French automobile manufacturer, for 12 years. And he was actually my mentor in automobile design. And this is one of the projects we did together. It's about the New York taxi cab for, well, New York taxi cab, New York taxi, and its 100th year anniversary. And one of the things I just wanted to mention was we looked at the taxi as a workplace for the driver. After all, you know, everybody deserves a good workplace, and taxi drivers, you know, are driving with, you know, 8, 10, 12-hour shifts. And so we tried to look at how could we create a more, you know, a better environment for them that honors the driver. And then I just wanted to kind of free flow into our sketchbook. These are BB and my sketches. This is BB, kind of the future of the New York taxi cab. And this is from a sketchbook that we sketched together in thinking about designing shirts for a Turkish company. What a shirt can be. And actually, I should mention that this was well, a project where they asked us, you can design anything as long as it's a white shirt. So the first thing we did a black shirt. Never give a carte blanche to a designer. So then we did a shirt. They made all of these, by the way, that's the wonderful part about it. We made a shirt with 12 sleeves. I don't know if any one of these got made. And then these are some of BB's sketches of what he calls warm-ups. He loves to, well, I think he does, kind of sketch different things to kind of warm up, almost like a sports person. And then these are actually some of the prototypes that he's working on right now. And then he goes back and forth between, his brain has taken off. And then a car design, once a car designer, always a car designer. I can't do these things. But really, here's the kind of the summary of you have a designer on one end, and then you have an idea. Then you go into development, and it just gets very complicated, and a lot of people get involved. But then the user falls in love, hopefully, with your product. And the whole point is that we are doing these projects because we are excited by design and innovation and new ideas in solving problems. And if the user can feel kind of that core idea or the excitement that we had at the very beginning, that's kind of all that we're trying to do. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that was just a wonderful sort of exposure to the product design aspects and the current environment. And now we're going to hear from Pablo Castro, who comes from an architectural background. Pablo was born in San Juan, Argentina, and was educated at the Universidad Nacional de San Juan before enrolling in the Masters of Science in Building Design program at Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. In 2003, he was named a de Montquin Senior Fellow by the Society of Architectural Historians. In 2006, a Fellow in Architecture and Environmental Structures from the New York Foundation for the Arts, and was the winner of the PS1 MoMA Young Architects program. He has been architect in residence at the Cranbrook Art Academy. He has lectured extensively and has taught design studio in the Graduate Architecture Department at Pratt Institute, Rhode Island School of Design, Parsons the New School for Design, and Barnard Columbia College. With Jennifer Lee, he founded OBRA Architects in the year 2000. So please welcome Pablo Castro, please.
To clarify that the real architect in residence at the Cranbrook Academy, at the architecture department of the Cranbrook Academy, who's in the audience, was Peter Lynch. And at the time that I served there for a brief period of time, he was on his way to a Rome Prize, and he was kind enough to invite me to spend some time there. And I just wanted to make that clarification. So, well, thanks, Russell, for the introduction. Thank you, Phyllis, for inviting us to participate. Ayse, very beautiful drawings and work. I feel a little bit like a fish out of water. Because, you know, a little bit like a design imposter, because architects have a very problematic relationship with design per se, or at least us as architects. We, you know, tend to get interested in the very big and also in the very small, and lack the focus sometimes to work things out to such a level of detail, always, all the time. I just wanted to show you some examples of our work. This is a project that we're developing currently for a church, a multiple use space. There's a community space and a gymnasium in New Canaan in Connecticut, and it's a building that in a way becomes so interested in the landscape that becomes part of the landscape, or sort of kind of disappears. The building is next to an existing barn, which you can see a little bit here, and connected with this breezeway. And by becoming this blister in the landscape that is cut to bring in light inside the space also breaks up the volumes of, like, I would say truly architectural volumes to a size and a proportion that is similar to the ends of the existing barn. And then because it has these towers that open on the roof, the building opens onto itself, but it's also to the outside. So it has an innovative way of relating to the environment itself. Architects also have a kind of malady of space. You know, it's a kind of professional deformation. And I think, you know, in a way, sometimes we get fascinated with the capacity for space to contain things and also to conceal and reveal things and create a kind of mystery that is unique to architecture. That also sometimes plays again with the ability to fixate in the object that a true designer, I imagine, needs to be obsessed with. This is an example for a pavilion in Coney Island, a competition that we did a few years ago. And it was an idea of creating domes utilizing flat stock material, because the whole of construction material is geared towards the production of flat raw materials, and creating a dome. This was in Coney Island called the Parachute Pavilion, and we wanted the architecture to resemble parachutes. So there were these big domes that had oculi on top, and they resemble eyes that were always looking at the structure of the Parachute Pavilion, if you know it, in Coney Island, which was on top. But the design here concentrated in the very small, because the domes were generated by two arrays of rings that were made out of flat material, and they were connected with each other with a hinge, and the geometry of those rings was such that when they connected, they generated a curved surface. This obsession with space and with a change of size also, I think, entices architects to get interested in things beyond the object, things that the object might suggest, the things that you cannot see, and that can be considered ideas or emotions, things that can move consciousness in a way. The other thing is the difference, I think, between true design and architecture is has a vocation for place. You know, it exists in a specific point in the world, and it travels badly. You know, at least traditionally conceived. This is an example of a project we just finished for a house in Long Island that is in a site that has a beautiful view of a farming reserve, and the roof of the house sort of curves into itself, creating a void for the family to occupy outside, but then it has a kind of centrifugal dynamic to the outside, and there are dormers on the roof that reflect that and open up the house towards the reserve for views to come in. So although the house has a kind of familiar language, this sort of simple transformation in scale and the role of the parts completely changes the way it operates. We work a lot with models, and this is a project that we're working on in China, which is being drawn for construction right now by a design institute in China. And these are some images of it, through which one aspect of this project is there are 100 young architects from all over the world that have been invited to participate in it. And it's a controversial project because the urban design that sustains all this architecture is somewhat tersely defined. So there's a lot of questioning about, is the whole going to constitute a nice place to live in? So this is an issue that is always important for architects. You know, does it generate a sense of place? And I think although, you know, prefabrication and movable structures have been around for a long time, the fact that the Museum of Modern Art recently organized the home delivery show, which was given to prefabrication, is proof that this issue is still controversial enough for the Museum of Modern Art to have it as a show in the museum. So there's some more images. Some work that we did that I think has the ability, because of its nature, to shrink at a level of detail that allows this kind of bridge between architecture and industrial design is a work that we did on the occasion of a talk that we gave at the Rhode Island School of Design that was called Arquitectura Povera. And the talk also coincided with a show in the exhibition space of the school that we call the Wall of Lessons. The space is very oddly shaped. It has some points some angles that point towards the middle of the space. And we thought it had bad feng shui. So we decided to build a room within a room that was made out of thin plywood, Luan plywood that was cut in a laser cutter. We were given by one of our clients this laser cutter early on, and we were using it to make toys. And then we decided to blow up one of these toys to a very big scale. We made the parts. You see, this was like trying to play a symphony in a toy piano. This thing is very small, and we were making 6,000 pieces. So the thing worked for about 3 months, 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, to make the pieces, to make this room out of the Luan plywood parts. So this is just a breakdown of the parts. And then we got because it was cheaper and the budget was very low, because it was cheaper, we got the parts through the Cooper Union shop. The Cooper Union shop has certain relationships with material providers to make models, the students do, and through them we bought it, and we bought it in several batches. And when we had almost finished cutting all the parts, we realized that Luan plywood comes in 2 slightly different thicknesses. And the system relied on a tight fit, right? This needed to fit tightly in order not to rack and fall. So the solution we found, we oiled all the pieces with linseed oil, lubrication. And that made it go together very well. And the gallery at RISI stunk of linseed oil, but it was very beautiful. It gave it a kind of dimension that you could only perceive with the nose. And we did, lighting studies. So our office is in Canal Street, near Canal Street in Chinatown. And before all the lighting stores became fake bag stores, we had an ability to buy different kinds of light bulbs, and we did all these tests in our office to get the right projection. There was, as I said, very low budget, so we sent all the pieces in a van with one of our employees, and the students put it together. So, but we were concerned that the students would not finish on time, or they would get distracted, or they would find the task too boring. So we decided to inscribe in some of the pieces lessons that they could share with each other as they took the pieces out of the box. So they would take the piece, read to each other, make jokes, laugh, and then the wall will go up thanks to that device. And this is an image of the finished work. In 2006, we did Beat Fuse, which was the Young Architects program organized by MoMA and PS1. And this is a photo of the model that we use to present during the competition. And we based our design on what we called a Concertina, which was basically a digitally generated dome on which we projected a grid. And then when that grid was flattened, all the pieces that were before straight had become curved or S-shaped, and it had precise location of holes for connectors between the different parts. So when the parts are reconnected, the form is recreated in wood. The idea was that it was going to work something like so this is a photo of the finished project, which, this is a project, if you don't know about it, it lasts a summer, and is a project that is organized by the museum as a kind of showcase of new architects, and it becomes the venue for a huge party, 5,000 people a week, and is, of course, a big fundraiser for the museum and a lot of fun. This is a day in the life of PS1. And these are some images of, we discovered working with the models during the preparation of the project that the museum was very insistent on having a lot of shade, and we thought of weaving this as a basket first, but we were concerned that the wind will catch as a sail and the whole thing would get blown off. There were hurricanes that were predicted for that summer, and so we at some point had the idea that instead of doing do a scale scheme like the scales of a reptile or a fish. But when we were working a model, the overlapping of the mesh created a projection of moire on the floor and the walls that was a virtual environment. It was like jumping in a swimming pool that defined a certain space. And it was great because one of our ideas was celebrating the diversity of Queens and the people that come to the party. And this sort of very subtle envelope contained the people very well and gave it a kind of cohesiveness under the domes. There were also some swimming pools that were very popular with the kids and with the grown-ups. This guy was not an actor, okay? He had nothing to do with us. He had flip-flops and suntan lotion. And then one of the spaces we devised as a frigidarium. The whole story was that this was a little bit like a Roman bath. There was a caldarium, a frigidarium, and a tepidarium. These ladies were very happy about the ice, but it was difficult to sit on. And on the opening day, when everybody was there and the press was there, the director of the museum invited me to sit on the ice together. So both of us spent the whole festivity with our butts soaked wet. But it was the museum's fault because we had designed this contraption that was supposed to go with it, but the museum decided not to develop. But they did develop our duck. This is a downtown duck. It's black. And on its ass, it sported the logo of the museum and PS1. And the director of the museum was, if you heard of it, Alana Heiss, very happy about this whole thing. I have some photos. This is a photo of construction, a little movie of the construction. Another object of design were the lanterns, which were also misters that cool the environment in the tepidarium. And they were inspired by, everybody's seen this, the clouds that get caught in the top of the Empire State Building on a stormy night. And they were also very popular. Feel such nostalgia. Show you quickly, this project came out of basically of the PS1 experience because the budget for PS1 was very low and it had to be done very fast. It was a kind of iron architect competition, and we had to manufacture everything, design everything digitally and manufacture it digitally. There was no time for shop drawings and the typical give and take between the manufacturer and the architect. So we had to take responsibility for the design, make precise drawings, and email them to the manufacturers, which in this case were in Minnesota. So we found a way of working directly with manufacturers very fast and very economically. Sometime after PS1, we found ourselves with not too much work and an office full of people that had helped us build PS1, and we wanted to retain those people. So Jennifer and I my partner Jennifer Lee, who's here in the audience, decided to renovate our apartment and Jennifer's sister's apartment, which is next door to ours. And we devised a system that we call Urbia, a furniture system for small apartments in large cities. And it was all digitally manufactured using CNC milling machine. And it was basically a series of torsion boxes that were 5 inches thick and fit in an elevator and could all be installed by 2 people, and made the components for all the walls and all the floors in the apartment. And they were, dry assembly, so they could be put together very fast. The apartment, went up in a week, and they have holes in them that permit access for the bolting of the piece. And this is very interesting because they kind of the system is completely unadorned, undesigned, if you like, from the point of view of ornamentation. But the holes that were needed in the exact locations where the bolts were create a pattern that creates that ornamentation almost unintentionally in a very poetic way. This is a load test. And there's some photos of the piece. These are photos of the finished project. It's it's a little prouvaient, and the vertical holes allow the light to flow through, and of course a little homage to John Prouvé. It's not out of the place. But on the ceiling, it has all these holes are the horizontal holes are access for tying up the panels when assembling the piece. It's fast, right? We work very fast. And a couple more slides. This is a project that we're working today. It's a show that should be installed in May at the National Art Museum in Beijing on the anniversary of the earthquake on May 12th. And the museum has invited 15 international architects to come up with ideas for emergency housing. And these ideas will be built full scale in the grounds and galleries of the museum. So our idea was what we call Red Cross housing. And it's there are 2 different approaches in terms of emergency housing. There's an approach that doesn't design an object but proposes a methodology. This methodology is brought to the areas that need emergency housing, and with materials and expertise or labor that is available in the place, something happens that helps people take charge of their situation and improve their life. The other system is the system that is completely prefabricated, and the archetype of which could be considered the army tent, and is brought in, and it can be put up in a couple of hours. So one is very fast, but in a situation of emergency, something that is temporary becomes permanent. So it has a drawback that people might spend a couple of years living in a tent. The other one, I think, has a kind of humanistic component of involving people and allowing them to help themselves that is very important, but also takes a very long time. So our approach was to try to hit something in between, find a system that is prefabricated and can be brought to the place where the emergency is occurring and the housing is needed, but that has certain characteristics that allows for a resident participation and creates not only the interior of the tent or the emergency house as an object, but also confines in a certain way that creates an urban space, that creates an exterior. Here this idea that with found materials and local expertise, we will build a wall around each one of these, creating a kind of in-between space between what is truly public and what is semi-public, that is created by the friction of the space that surrounds the house, and where people can spend some time outside without being in the public space, or can use as gardens to plant tomatoes. It's a prefabricated system. It uses our Concertina system now, not like a dome, but like as a vault. And it has 4 parts, and that gives it certain flexibility because we feel it could be used for 1 family, 2 families, 3 families, or 4 families, depending on the situation. And these are some photos of what the interior could look like. And that's it. Thank you very much.